Very good evening and welcome. This is News First Primetime News here on TV1. For the News First team, I'm Zaimal Ratnayaka. Today is the 11th of September 2023.
I'm Mariam Vinamijaya. First up is a look at the headlines.
Sri Lanka must conduct independent, transparent probe into Easter Sunday attacks, says UNHRC while drawing concern to PTA and legislation on broadcasting. Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna consents to international investigation on Easter Sunday attacks. Will the Hamilton Reserve Bank lawsuit impact Sri Lanka's debt restructuring? Chief incumbent of the Mihintale Rajamaha Viharaya leads new Bhikkhu movement. MBC Networks secures Sri Lanka radio broadcast rights for ICC Cricket World Cup 2023.
On to your lead story this evening, the 54th session of the United Nations Human Rights Council opened in Geneva today.
Nada al-Nashif, the United Nations Deputy High Commissioner for Human Rights, said Sri Lanka should establish a follow-up, independent and transparent investigation into the Easter Sunday attacks.
1 year after the remarkable protest movement demanding deep political and democratic reforms, the transformation that was hoped for to address long-standing challenges has still not materialized. Delays in holding local government elections and in reconstituting provincial councils under the 13th Amendment have limited people's right to political participation and the free expression of voters. Our office continues to receive cases of misuse of tear gas and water cannons during demonstrations, affecting protesters and media personnel. Initiatives by victims to memorialize their loved ones have also been obstructed. These measures restricting the right to protest will only generate more tension in the country as they prevent people from expressing their grievances and engaging in critical debate. The report provides an analysis of concerns with some forthcoming legislation, in particular the proposed anti-terrorism bill that will replace the Prevention of Terrorism Act and a new law to regulate media broadcasting. It urges a moratorium on the use of the PTA in the meantime and for the review of long-standing PTA cases to be expedited. 14 years since the war ended, tens of thousands of victims and their families continue to suffer in agony and grief as they await truth, justice and remedy. Truth-seeking alone will not be sufficient and must be accompanied by a clear commitment to accountability, including through an independent ad hoc special court. The High Commissioner has repeatedly recommended that the government of Sri Lanka should establish a follow-up, independent and transparent investigation into the Easter Sunday attacks with international assistance and the full participation of victims and their representatives. Accountability is central to secure Sri Lanka's present and its future. While it remains the obligation of the Sri Lankan authorities to acknowledge past violations and undertake credible accountability measures, this Council and the Member States can play an important and complementary role in advancing accountability. My office remains committed to supporting the government and the people of Sri Lanka in advancing reconciliation and accountability, as well as the full enjoyment of human rights.
Sri Lanka rejected the written update, its conclusion and recommendations.
The content of the written update does not reflect the actual situation in Sri Lanka. The economic, social and financial stabilization Sri Lanka has achieved in the past year has been appreciated and acknowledged domestically and externally. Sri Lanka remains firmly committed to pursuing tangible progress on human rights through our domestic institutions and have made significant progress. Deliberations continue on the draft anti-terrorism bill with the aim of bringing it in line with international standards. Tangible progress has been made by independent domestic mechanisms, inter alia the Office on Missing Persons, Office for Reparations and Office for National Unity and Reconciliation. As a responsible member of the international community, Sri Lanka will continue to engage constructively with the UN in keeping with domestic priorities and policies as well as the international obligations voluntarily undertaken.
Several countries also commented on the report by the Office of the United Nations Human Rights Commissioner.
Sri Lanka still has a long way to go to fulfill commitments to justice, accountability and reconciliation. We are concerned by continued incidents of intimidation and harassment of civil society and journalists and by the arbitrary use of laws to suppress dissent. As Sri Lanka takes forward its economic recovery, we stress the importance of effective governance reforms and note the recent anti-corruption legislation. This must be accompanied by safeguarding established independent institutions and democratic processes.
France welcomes what the authorities have done to restore the economy, and we encourage the authorities to continue to do what they can do to establish a rule of law which respects the rights of the population. We underscore the need to continue in this vein in the interest of all Sri Lankans by calling in particular the authorities of the country to preserve the freedoms of expression and of peaceful assembly. France also calls upon Sri Lanka to fully use the OHHR's technical assistance set up by the Human Rights Council, that is, to support the government in the context of the national reconciliation process.
The EU calls on Sri Lanka to enable the right of peaceful assembly and refrain from any use of force against peaceful demonstrators. We call upon Sri Lanka to suspend the Prevention of Terrorism Act until it is in full compliance with international human rights law and standards, and also call for accountability and immediate action to end impunity. The EU encourages the government of Sri Lanka to remain engaged with the UN and international partners and to fully cooperate with the High Commissioner. The EU will continue to support Sri Lanka's efforts towards a fully inclusive dialogue on governance, rule of law, democratic renewal, as well as human rights.
As it navigates its economic recovery, we recognize Sri Lanka's strengthened reforms, including anti-corruption legislation. We also welcome the government's release on bail of over 100 individuals held without trial under the Prevention of Terrorism Act. We commend initial progress on land returns. However, we must note our concerns about other land grabs in the north and east. We encourage meaningful consultations in finalizing the Anti-Terrorism Act and hope these discussions help bring the law into alignment with international best practices. We urge Sri Lanka to ensure transitional justice institutions operate credibly and effectively. Reconciliation initiatives should be victim-centered, inclusive, impartial, transparent, and independent. Governments that ensure freedom of expression and peaceful protests enjoy greater peace and stability. How can we best support the Sri Lankan government and people to develop a credible reconciliation process and pursue accountability?
General Secretary of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, Attorney-at-Law Sagara Karyavasam says the SLPP is ready for an international investigation to address the allegations raised with regard to the Easter Sunday attacks.
At the same time, the Deputy General Secretary of the Samagi Jana Balawege, Mujibur Rahman, says that the President is attempting to appoint investigative committees to block any attempt of an international inquiry.
They
simply want to seal Zaharan's coffin with the last nail and end it. The Defence Ministry rejected the claims made by Channel 4. The President says that he will appoint a committee led by a Supreme Court judge to investigate claims made by Channel 4. Who supervises the Ministry of Defence? It is under the purview of the President. Is the President not aware that the Ministry of Defence rejected these claims? Did the Defence Secretary issue a statement without consulting the Defence Minister? Before calling for an investigation on the claims made by Channel 4, the President must investigate the Defence Ministry. He says that a committee will be appointed to investigate and that the reports will be presented to the Parliament. The Parliament is not the Criminal Investigations Department. The Parliament cannot investigate. The President is also engaged in deception. We wonder, is this an attempt to protest those who are facing these allegations?
The SLPP General Secretary elaborated on the party's position.
We wonder if the international community, in addition to the conspiratorial groups in Sri Lanka, fears the rise of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna because Channel 4 had released a video without any basis at once. On the 10th of February 2018, we secured a 79% victory at the local government elections. If one says that we wanted the votes for something else, that person is insane or a person who cannot understand anything. There are talented detectives, yet if the government assumes that it cannot be satisfied with it, we as a party call for an international investigation. We view this program as a one made of fear over the rise of the SLPP, and it contains no actual basis or truth.
The Financial Times says that the US government suddenly and obliquely saying it wanted to get involved in a lawsuit against Sri Lanka for defaulting on a $250 million bond is intriguing.
Hamilton Reserve Bank in St. Kitts and Nevis has filed a lawsuit against Sri Lanka for defaulting on a $250 million bond.
What is the lawsuit filed by Hamilton Reserve Bank?
Sri Lanka was sued in the US by a bondholder after the South Asian nation defaulted on its debt for the first time in history while struggling to stop an economic meltdown. Hamilton Reserve Bank Limited, which holds more than $250 million of Sri Lanka's 5.875% international sovereign bonds due July 25th, filed the suit in a New York federal court seeking full payment of the principal and interest. The Hamilton Reserve Bank owns over $250 million in principal amount of the $1 billion worth international sovereign bonds issued in 2012. The bonds matured on the 25th of July 2022. Hamilton alleged that as a result of Sri Lanka's default, it is owed $250.19 million in principal and $7.349 million in accrued interest. The Hamilton Reserve Bank is in St. Kitts and Nevis, and it is a small bank based in a country with 50,000 people. St. Kitts and Nevis is potentially one of the best available tax havens in the world.
Why is this lawsuit back in discussion?
The Financial Times says that the Hamilton Reserve Bank's stake and the unusual aggressiveness of its lawsuit against Sri Lanka, which began almost as soon as it defaulted in April 2022, always smelled a bit fishy. The US government suddenly and obliquely saying it wanted to get involved made the whole situation even more intriguing. The US will occasionally file amicus briefs laying out its views on contentious legal cases where it has pressing national interests, but it hardly ever gets involved in something as routine like this. Sri Lanka's law firm Clifford Chance for the first time explicitly said who it thinks is driving this is a Chinese-American financier called Benjamin Wei. Wei has a history of legal and regulatory problems. He was arrested for fraud in 2015, but the charges were dropped. The US government's intervention in the lawsuit suggests that it is concerned about Wei's motives and the potential impact of his lawsuit on Sri Lanka. The Financial Times says that according to the presentations made, there is an argument from those who filed the lawsuit that they can block the IMF payments until the money is paid off. It adds that the Hamilton Reserve Bank's $250 million is enough in theory to veto any restructuring proposals Sri Lanka makes.
Parliamentarian Partly Champika Ranawaka commented on sovereign bonds that were issued during an address in Maharagama.
The $1 billion bond lost its value in the secondary market. When Sri Lanka reached the level bankruptcy, the bond could have been purchased at half the face value. It is reported that the Hamilton Reserve Bank had obtained $250 million worth bonds from the secondary market. It does not mean they paid $250 million for it. They had purchased the bonds for less than the face value. The Financial Times, an internationally acclaimed media outlet, had revealed of an arrangement between former central bank governor Ajit Niwat Cabral and a person from the Hamilton Reserve Bank. Therefore, we have serious concerns. The first concern we have is what was the offer price for these bonds in the secondary market? The central bank must respond. Was there any agreement to pay for the bonds by depriving the people of the fertilizer, fuel and electricity? What was the commission they secured from this? A just investigation must be carried out. $500 million worth bonds were settled in similar fashion. That raises more concerns. Therefore, this is the responsibility of the central bank governor and the finance minister, who is the president. There needs to be an investigation into the links between Hamilton Reserve Bank and Ajit Niwat Cabral. If an economic crime had taken place, it needs to be looked into. Justice must be served for the people of this country.
The Freedom People's Congress raised concerns about a possible corruption over the funds received through the International Monetary Fund.
The representatives of the IMF who are supposed to visit Sri Lanka in another 2 to 3 days should be aware about this. There is no use of bringing in new regulations. They used these new regulations to satisfy the IMF. The IMF has stressed that these changes need to be done and they have set a deadline as well. We think that the representatives of the IMF who are planning to visit Sri Lanka should pay more keen interest on this. This will be our request to them as well. During the past 25 years, 14 countries have sought assistance from the IMF. Out of these 14 countries, only 2 touched the Social Security Fund. But these 2 countries made sure that their banking systems were also included in the debt optimization process. We are the only country in the world that has piled this burden on the working masses. Then we have concerns over the mandate as well. We need a proper, responsible body to accept these funds in a more accountable manner, or else there is no use from these funds. The IMF should stress to the government these concerns.
Sri Lankan officials will engage in talks with a team from the International Monetary Fund from Thursday on the first review of the extended fund facility arrangement for.
The talks between the Sri Lankan officials and the IMF was confirmed by State Minister of Finance Ranjit Siambalapitiya today. An IMF spokesperson earlier said that the team from the International Monetary Fund is scheduled to visit Colombo between the 14th and the 27th of September. In March this year, the IMF board approved a 48-month extended arrangement under the extended fund facility of about $3 billion to support Sri Lanka's economic policies and reforms. The EFF supported program aims to restore Sri Lanka's macroeconomic stability and debt sustainability, mitigate the economic impact on the poor and vulnerable, safeguard financial sector stability and strengthen governance and growth potential. The Executive Board's decision enables an immediate disbursement and catalyze financial support from other development partners. President Ranil Wickremesinghe held a special discussion with SLPP national organizer Basil Rajapaksa. Now, SLPP General Secretary Attorney at Law Sagar Karyavasan commented on the meeting at a media briefing.
Discussions are often held between Basil Rajapaksa and the President. We inform the President of our requirements as a party, how things should be done regarding the future affairs of the country and our suggestions on that. Currently, Basil Rajapaksa, who is the strength of our party, is having discussions with the President whenever it is necessary. I think such a discussion was held yesterday. Usually, such discussions take place only between the President and Basil Rajapaksa. Others don't take part in those discussions.
බැසිල් රාජපක්ෂ මැතිතුමා සහ ජනාධිපතිතුමා අතර පමණයි. වෙනත් අය සහභාගී වෙන්නේ නැහැ මේ සාකච්ඡාවට. ඉදිරි ජනාධිපතිවරණය සම්බන්ධයෙන් සාකච්ඡා කරලා තියෙනවද? නෑ මම දැනුවත් තරමට එහෙම දෙයක් සම්බන්ධයෙන් සාකච්ඡාවක් වීලා නැහැ කියලා තමයි මගේ හැඟීම. පැයකට ආසන්න කාලයක් සාකච්ඡා පැවැත්වුණා කියලා මාධ්‍ය වාර්තා කරනවා. එතකොට මොන කාරණා ගැන සාමාන්‍යයෙන් සාකච්ඡා කරන්නේ නැද්ද කියලාද ඔබතුමා අදහස් කරන්නේ? මොනවා වුණත්
We are usually advised on the future programs of the country. That is not a conspiracy. That is a meeting between the two of them for the betterment of this country.
මේ රහසිගත කුමන්ත්‍රණකාරී දෙයක් නෙමෙයි. ඒක මේ රට වෙනුවෙන් මේ දෙදෙනා එකතු වෙලා රටේ අනාගතය වෙනුවෙන් කරන සාකච්ඡාවක්. උදාහරණයක් විදිහට කෙටියෙන්ම කිව්වොත් රට පාලනය කරන්නේ තවමත් ඔබතුමන්ලාද බැසිල් රාජපක්ෂ මහත්මයා එකතු වෙලාද මේ රට පාලනය කරන දේවල් වලටද මේ සාකච්ඡා කරන්නේ කොහොමද? එහෙම කිව්වොත් ඒක
That is wrong. Even if Ranil Wickremesinghe were appointed president, he can't lead a government without the support of the parliament. As the ruling party of the parliament, we must inform the president of what we don't agree with. It is not that we don't have problems. We are fulfilling the necessities of this country without raising any major concerns.
ලොකු ප්‍රශ්න නැතුව අපි මේ රට වෙනුවෙන් අවශ්‍ය කාරණු කාරණා ඉටු කරමින් යනවා. ඉදිරි අයවැයක් සම්බන්ධයෙන් හෝ මොනවා හරි සාකච්ඡාවක් වෙලා තියෙනවද? පාර්ලිමේන්තු කණ්ඩායමේ
The ruling party of the parliament consists of MPs from the SLPP. So as a party, we have a right for that.
හැටියට අපිට ඒ අයිතිය තියෙනවා. ඒ අයිතිය අපි පාවිච්චි කරනවා. දැන් ඔබතුමා කලිනුත් ඉල්ලීමක් කරලා තිබුණා අමාත්‍ය ධූර සම්බන්ධයෙන්. ඒ සම්බන්ධයෙන් මේ වෙනකොට මොන හරි අප්ඩේට් එකක් ඒ කියන්නේ යහපත් ප්‍රතිචාරයක් එහෙම තියෙනවද? ඒ කියන්නේ අපි ඒ ඉල්ලීම කරා.
We requested that and the president has granted his right to make decisions to us on that. We will only make such requests as a party.
හැටියට ඉල්ලීම කරනවා මිසක් ඉල්ලීමෙන් පස්සේ පින්සෙන්ඩු වෙන්න ආයාචනා කරන්න එහෙම යන්නේ නැහැ.
On to another story that made it to our headlines tonight. Chief incumbent of the Mihintale Rajamaha Viharaya, Venerable Dr. Valawa Hangunawave Dhammaratana Thera, will lead a new Bhikkhu movement in Sri Lanka.
Multiple factions representing the Buddhist clergy, including the Sinhala Rave National Organisation, the National Sangha Federation and the Surakimu Sri Lanka National Movement, called on Venerable Dr. Valawa Hangunawave Dhammaratana Thera.
පල්ලෙහාන් චීනට දෙනවා.
The south is awarded to China and the north is awarded to India. National security is going to the United States of America. Everything that will be released is being lined up. In the end, we will not have a country. Within the next few years, we will be living as slaves in this country. Therefore, we will be forming a movement led by the chief incumbent. This is an independent struggle that will bring the Mahasangha, the religious leaders and the people together. Ranil Wickramasinghe and his guns will not be able to stop us.
මේක රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මහත්තයාගේ යකඩ තුවක්කුවටවත් ඔහුගේ සෙල්ලම් වැඩවලටවත් අතර කරන්න හම්බ වෙන්නේ නැහැ.
Ranil Wickramasinghe has no mandate. That is why he is enforcing the law as he pleases. We would like to call him to declare elections and also declare his policies.
එන්න මැතිවරණයකට. මැතිවරණයට ඇවිල්ලා ජනාධිපතිවරණයට ඇවිල්ලා ඔබතුමාගේ ප්‍රතිපත්ති ටික යන.
තක්කඩි වල් වැදිච්ච දේශපාලඥයන්ට කඩේ යන්නේ නැතිව චහ චීවරය එකතු වෙලා
The clergy must rally together instead of supporting the errant politicians. We need to create a debt-free and secure country.
කහ චීවරය එකතු වෙන්න ඕනයි කියන කාරණය මතක් කරන්න අදාවේ.
News first with the people.
The annual festival of the Nallur Kandas Swamikkull is taking place in Jaffna for the 22nd day.
One of the key elements of the annual festival of the Nallur Kandas Swamikkull is the Danda Yudapani festival. The Danda Yudapani festival takes place to highlight the dispute between two gods. The flag hoisting ceremony of the Nallur Kandas Swamikkull took place recently, and for a period of 25 consecutive days, religious events will take place at the premises, attracting devotees from all over the world. During this period, the special chariot known as the Ther is taken around the Kovil premises and devotees take the time to fulfill their vows. The Ther festival of the Nallur Kandas Swamikkull will take place this week. Sri Lanka's first ever Tamil language television channel Shakti TV opened its special studios in Nallur to coincide with the celebrations. Shakti TV will bring all the details on the Nallur Kandas Swamikkull festival from this dedicated studio. Religious and cultural items will take place at this special studio for 3 days. In addition, News First and Shakti TV screen tests will also take place at the premises.
The Information and Communication Technology Agency of Sri Lanka, or ICTA, says that a data loss pertaining to emails of several state institutions, including the President's Office and Cabinet Office, has occurred owing to a cyber attack.
According to its CEO Mahesh Perera, the attack was unavoidable since the data system relating to the gov.lk domain had not been updated.
The cyber attack had targeted the Microsoft Exchange data system where emails of the gov.lk domain are stored. It is managed by ICTA. It had occurred on the 26th of last month. The attack, which has been identified as a ransomware attack, has encrypted a host of emails of the Presidential Secretariat, Cabinet Office, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education and other state institutions. In a message, the hackers have demanded a ransom to allow access to the encrypted mails. The Sri Lanka Computer Emergency Readiness Team, or SLCERT, has informed ICTA that it is unable to decrypt the emails. Is the state email domain insecure? ICTA says the domain, set up in 2007, was last updated in 2013. It points out the domain should be updated every 4 to 5 years. ICTA goes on to state, although it requested permission to update the system in 2021 and 2022, it had not been given. ICTA believes the system not being updated has resulted in it being unsafe, allowing the attackers to hack the domain with ease. Was there no backup? Following the attack on the 26th of August, ICTA had attempted to recover the lost data through secure websites that maintain automatic backups, but that too had failed since that data was also attacked. ICTA went on to note it managed to restore data through an external data storage system, but it did not contain data from the past 2.5 months. ICTA revealed that nearly 5,000 email addresses were affected owing to this ransomware attack.
Offline backup එකක් තිබ්බනම් අපිට
If an offline backup was available, we could have restored the data without any hindrances. There have been obstacles in updating some of the software. Had that been avoided, could have prevented this attack to a large extent. Data is something worth more than gold. Data can be used to harm us. People who should not have access to those data have taken control of it. This poses a great threat to national security since information on discussions within state institutions are leaked to external parties.
ඒක ලොකු බලපෑමක් වෙන්න පුළුවන් ජාතික ආරක්ෂාවට.
Although News First attempted to contact the Sri Lanka Computer Emergency Readiness Team or SLCERT for a comment on the matter, they did not respond. However, SLCERT has mentioned in its website that an investigation on the matter has commenced. In 2021, a similar data loss was revealed when sensitive data of the National Medicines Regulatory Authority or NMRA was wiped out. Data of the NMRA included in the government cloud had been suddenly wiped out. An officer employed at the private company managing the data system was initially accused, claiming the data was deleted by him. Incidentally, this data system did not have a backup similar to the state's email domain. Later, it was revealed in court that the data administration officer of the private company managing the system had deleted the data for 7 hours. Presenting facts in court, the senior Deputy Solicitor General said since this was part of the organized medical mafia, a thorough investigation will be conducted on all those who are connected to the crime and will be brought before the law. When an employee attached to the private company was produced in court, he claimed that the deletion of extremely sensitive data was not a mistake but was done on purpose. However, no one has been held accountable for this crime to this day. Leader of the opposition, Sajith Premadasa, says that a free and independent country should exist in the hearts and minds of the people instead of merely on a piece of paper.
Religious tensions were created to foster separation. So, will there be national security when hate is spread in one's own country? The constitution speaks of a united, sovereign, independent and free country with territorial integrity. Yet, there is no point in having it on paper. It should exist in the hearts of every single Sri Lankan. That is when the country and its security will be protected.
The opposition leader was speaking at an event to present credentials to the Deputy Chief Sanganayaka of Gaul, Venerable Unanvitiye Premarathana Thero.
In other local developments, a Sri Lankan man was charged with the murder of his wife after her body was found at a hotel in Katong. A Sri Lankan man identified as 30-year-old Eshantaraka Kottage is accused of murdering his wife, Diyavinnage Sewandi Maduka Kumari, on the 9th of September at a Singapore hotel. The charge sheet did not state how the alleged attack was committed. The prosecution applied for him to be remanded for 1 week with permission to take him out for investigations, scene revisitations and recovery of exhibits. The accused requested through an interpreter to speak to the Sri Lankan High Commission to engage a lawyer and asked for the state to provide him a lawyer, but was told he could not communicate with anyone at this juncture. He will return to court on the 18th of September. According to the police, the accused went to Marine Parade Neighbourhood Police Centre on Saturday to inform police officers that he had killed the wife at the hotel. He was then arrested. The 32-year-old woman was found lying motionless with a slash wound in a hotel room when the police arrived. She was pronounced dead at the scene. A knife believed to have been used in the incident was recovered in the hotel room. If convicted, Eshantaraka faces the death penalty.
A barge named the Olympic from Sembakung in Indonesia has washed up on Sri Lanka's southern coast.
According to the Sri Lanka Navy, a salvage team will be dispatched from Colombo to the site of the wreck to assess the situation and submit a report to relevant authorities. The vessel was being towed from Indonesia to Maldives when the tow rope apparently broke during bad weather on the 9th and it was washed ashore in Bundala.
The rain disrupted Asia Cup Super 4 blockbuster clash between India and Pakistan got underway at the R. Premadasa Stadium in Colombo, Sri Lanka. After the group match between India and Pakistan was washed out, intermittent rain pushed the Asia Cup Super 4 clash between the two teams to a reserve day, which is today. The match can be watched live on TV1, the official local broadcaster of the tournament, and also on www.sirasatv.lk.
Into the air. He loves batting on this ground.
Also in related news, MBC Networks Private Limited secured the radio broadcasting rights for the ICC Men's Cricket World Cup 2023.
MTV Channel Private Limited is also the Sri Lankan television rights holder for the ICC Men's Cricket World Cup 2023.
Sri Lankan cricket fans will be able to listen to all the action from the ICC Men's Cricket World Cup 2023 on Sirasa FM, YFM, Yes FM and Legends, which are owned by the MBC Networks Private Limited. Recently, we announced that MTV Channel Private Limited, which operates Sirasa TV, Shakti TV and TV1, is the Sri Lanka television rights holder for the ICC Men's Cricket World Cup 2023. The MTV MBC Champion Network has taken all the necessary measures to bring the action from the ICC Men's Cricket World Cup 2023 to its viewers and listeners. India will be hosting the ICC Men's Cricket World Cup 2023 from the 5th of October to the 19th of November.
And that's a wrap of your news for today.
Thank you and good night.